Hello and welcome back to the Fit 40 podcast, where we simplify exercise and nutrition for busy parents 40 plus so they can improve their health and feel amazing. I'm your host, Brian Fitzsimmons, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach for people over 40 since 2015. And today we have an awesome topic. We're going to be talking about unlocking your inner athlete, training for strength beyond the scale. Now, before we dive in, as always, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening so that way you don't miss another episode going forward. And it really does help the show. So I appreciate it so much for you taking the time, just that 1 second, hit the button. And then that way you get notified every single week. Hey, new episode. So you don't have to keep looking for it and finding it the old fashioned way. All right. So let's get into it. Unlocking your inner athlete and training for strength beyond the scale. So let's address the first question, which is why the heck is somebody in their 40s, 50s, 60s, or beyond, like, why would they want to train like an athlete? They're not going to be on a field with people trying to hit them and take them to the ground. They're not going to be on a basketball court jumping around, making hard cuts. Like, why the heck would we want to go to that level? Or why would we want to come at it with that scope? Well, plain and simple, life is a sport, because when you break it down, it's very similar, especially when it comes to like risk of injury or risk of any negative effects. Because when it comes to life, there is risk just from being alive. There's risk for being active, and then there's risk for being inactive. So are you likely to break your arm or roll your ankle just by sitting on the couch all day? No. But are you at a greater risk for being metabolically unhealthy? Abso-freaking-lutely. Okay, so there are negative effects and there's also benefits that come with both. You just got to make sure that we're doing the right amount of each, because we don't want to be doing so much that we're forcing ourselves into a bad position where we're getting injured all the time and we feel like crap 24/7, but we're staying active. We don't want to do that. We also don't want to sit on our butt all day and get all the negative effects of that, but we do want to prioritize rest and recovery to the right amount so that we get the best results and we feel our best so we can do these things outside of the gym. All right. And a really helpful way of looking at this is just looking at the demands that life places on us. So I've broken it down into three. I'm sure as soon as I'm done recording this, I'm going to be like, damn, I could have thought of another three or four, but here's what I got for you today. Number one is movement patterns. So what are the things that we're doing on a daily basis that we need to be ready for? Because one of the worst things you could do is avoid movement. I know a lot of people do this when it comes to their lower back. They're like, oh, I tweaked my back, so I'm never going to do a deadlift, or I'm never going to pick anything up from the ground again. And it's like, well, what happens when a little kid jumps up and says, hey, pick me up, like your kid or your grandkid? Or let's say your dog or your cat, like they need to be picked up for something. Maybe you got to bring them to the vet. Are we just going to all of a sudden not do that? And then this presents an injury risk, because now we're doing this movement that hasn't been done in a long time. So your muscles are atrophied. You are less likely to do the movement efficiently because you haven't done it in so long. So your risk for injury is elevated more so than it would be if you trained that in the gym in an intelligent way that doesn't keep pissing off your back. Okay. Then there's cardiovascular health. Like, do we need the ability to do things with a level of exertion throughout the day where our heart rate goes up and then we got to bring it back down? So something as simple as running around with your kids or creating kids, like in the bedroom. That is where a lot of cardiac events do sometimes happen, where you're in the middle of fun time and then you have to stop or you can't keep going. And then on top of that, it creates a negative experience because it's like, we got to stop now. So before I go too in depth on that, we'll cut it there. Next is making decisions and managing your state while under stress. This is one of those things that strength training and cardio teaches us that is super valuable, that people just don't really bring up enough, which is like you learn how to operate when you're stressed, and you are able to do that in other stressful situations that may not be physically stressful, but like mentally or emotionally, psychologically stressful. And you're able to handle that better than not putting yourself through the practice of doing it while strength training or cardiovascular training. So next up is movement. First up is movement. Let's go in depth on that. All right. So first thing we want to think about when it comes to movement is, yes, like what are we doing on a day-to-day basis? How do we train that? And how do we train it with a full range of motion, or the best available range of motion that you are capable of, given any injury history or things like that? Like, how low can you go? How close to your chest when you're pressing, can you go? Or pulling, can you go without any pain, but still able to go through that whole way without cutting it off just to bump up weight? Like a lot of people will uh, go heavier and heavier and heavier, and their range of motion starts going lower and lower and lower. You see this a lot with the guys. And then what happens? They get tighter and tighter and tighter. And then what happens there? You move a little too far in one direction because you've now not been training in that depth of range, and pop goes the weasel. Okay, no, we don't want that to happen. We don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're more frail because we don't train all the way. We just go, wait, 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 add it, add it, add it. No, we don't sacrifice movement quality for that. All right. And then also, we want to make sure we're getting strong in all planes of motion. Again, the typical example of this is that bodybuilder who's got his shoulders rounded forward. He moves around like a robot slash ape and just doesn't really have a whole lot of motion. So if you were to ask them to like turn and hand you something, they couldn't turn their shoulders, or if they had to pick something up that wasn't perfectly situated, like a deadlift, then their back goes out, like they're not helpful outside of the gym. We don't want that. So what we want to do is hit the three different planes: sagittal, lateral, and transverse. So what are they? Sagittal is front to back. So basically, if you were to sit down and stand up from a chair, all your joints and everything are moving forward or backwards so that you can go straight up, straight down. And that's something that we got to do every day: sitting down, standing up, whether it's from a chair, from the toilet, whatever. You got to be able to do that in an efficient way and without pain. Then lateral movement. So that's side to side. Again, our joints are moving forward and back. They're rotating. They're doing all these things to make sure we can stay in place. Like we're not moving further forward or further backward. We're moving left to right. And you might have to do that when, say, you've got groceries in one hand and then your kid is on your leg saying, pick me up, pick me up. Then you got to bend sideways to pick them up. Or it's like a pet and you got to like lean down to attend to them while holding on to the groceries. If you can't do that in a way that doesn't result in pain, then you're going to put yourself in that situation over and over and over again. And we don't want that. We don't want to come back to the gym and be like, yeah, hurt my back. Oh, what'd you do? Picked up my kid. It's like, wait, what, really? Or, oh, I bent over to pet my dog. No, we don't want that. Next is transverse plane. The typical example of this, and if she's listening, you know who you are, because this has happened before, where you reach back into the back of your car and ow, I hurt my shoulder. That's the transverse plane, where you have to rotate. You got to twist and reach, or twist and step. And when you're not able to do that without feeling some sort of pain, then that presents issues. Like when you're reaching for something in the back of your car, when you're trying to do it really fast, you're in a rush and you got to go, and then ow, now I got to go add something onto, I got to add a physical therapist appointment on my calendar, or go see the doctor. One more thing, great. Or anything else you can really think of that requires twisting. You want to be really, really good at that so you can do that stuff no problem. And then when it comes to cardiovascular health, you want a mix of high intensity interval style training and low intensity steady state. So hit or LISS. So when it comes to hit, we want to think how I mentioned before, like this is during sex when you go, all right, pedal to the metal. And then, when you're running after your kid or your pet, like say they got loose, like that viral video of that woman who fell over and the child was like rolling away in a stroller into oncoming traffic. Like you need to be able to get up and go. Like that's where superwoman kicks in and you go, all right, run, 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 run. Now you don't want to be to the point where it's like, oh my God, I feel like I need to go to urgent care after that. You want to be like, oh, I could do this all day. Like I sprinted, I feel fine. And all right, we're on with our day. And then the way that you do that is you practice that in the gym. So you do things like, for example, high intensity interval training could be as low as say 5 to 10 or 15 seconds of hard work. That could be medicine ball slams, like throwing a ball down into the ground. It could be kettlebell swings. It could be jumps. Don't fear the jumps. Yes, they are high impact, but when you do them correctly for the right dosage, they could be the best thing ever for building bone density and improving your cardiovascular strength. Okay, so sorry about that. Anywho, that's hit. You want to make sure that you're doing a level of work and then a level of rest. So for example, like playing on the minute can help a lot with this. So let's say you're doing 15 seconds of work like we do on day A of the Fit 40 program. We do 15 45s. So you do 15 seconds of work, then you rest for 45 seconds, and you do that back and forth for as many rounds as you can without losing movement quality or power production. So that could be a good way to do it. You could do 30 30s where it's not quite as crazy high intensity as 15 seconds worth, because you want to put your all out effort into the 15 seconds ish. Like the lower the time, the higher the effort. And then when you go to 30, the effort isn't quite as high, but the output is consistent. It's a little bit lower on the heart rate usually. And you do 30 seconds of that, 30 seconds of rest. And then if you want to go a little bit further than that, you could do like a minute on, minute off, or you could do like 30 seconds on, 60 seconds off if you're going really high intensity and really pushing it. And it also depends on how your body responds. So you could play it like, okay, I'm going to do 15 seconds of work, and then I'm not going to start the next round until my heart rate gets back down into this zone. So a good way to do it would be like, say you're doing high intensity interval training, you're pushing it pedal to the metal, and it's like in zone 5. So that would be like that upper percentage of your max heart rate. Bring it down to like zone 3, which I believe is 65 to 75% of your max heart rate. If you get a really simple strap, like I like using Morpheus for this exact reason, because it'll tell you, hey, you're in this zone or you're in this zone. For Morpheus, it's like the overload zone would be that high intensity zone where you're pushing it hard, hard, hard. And then conditioning zone would be like that middle ground. And then recovery zone would be what I'm about to talk about next, which is low intensity stuff. So if you can go from overload down to conditioning level, and you go from like high to medium / low, that's where you want to start that next round. So you do 15 seconds of work, then you drop down and let your body rest and recover, bring your breathing down, your heart rate down into that lower zone, like that zone 3, that recover or the conditioning zone. And then once you've hit that, boom, right back to the overload, and do it that way. I hope that made sense. And then next is low intensity steady state, LISS training. And this is really important when it comes to just doing things that you want to experience. Like the thing that comes to mind for me is the vacation experiences. Like you want to be able to walk down the beach for an hour or two with your significant other, just talking and living life, or like watching your kids play with the shells or things like that. And then there's hiking. Like you want to be able to go on these hikes and take in nature and see all this beautiful stuff, get an incredible view that looks like the screen on your computer, but you're actually living it and witnessing it because it's 1,000 times better that way. Or you're swimming in the ocean or in a pool with your kids, your grandkids, and you're able to do that with them and be present. And God forbid, like something were to happen, you can swim and go get them and be like, I'm capable, I'm independent, I can do these things. And it can make such a world of difference. And then last but not least is the stress. So when you are lifting heavy weights or you're doing hard cardio, or even if you're doing the low intensity stuff, you're focusing on what's in front of you. And you're usually able to block a lot of things out. Like, for example, if you are lifting a very heavy, hard weight, good luck thinking about that list in your head. Good luck thinking about all the stressful stuff you got going on in your life, because this thing is demanding every ounce of your attention. And then you come out of it and you're like, whoa, what was I even thinking about before? Oh yeah. And then you're like back to thinking about it, but it's not at that same degree of intensity. Like before, it was like a 10 out of 10 in your head, and you're like, oh my God, I can't stop thinking about this thing. And then you do this heavy lifting and you're like, okay, now I'm back to thinking about it, but it's like a 7 out of 10. Like it's not as crazy, and I'm seeing it with a little bit better of perspective, because it also helps you create that space that sometimes we need when we're stressed out to make an objective decision or rationalize it in a way that makes sense, that isn't driven by emotion, which I know so many of us need right now, because emotions are sky high, because social media, these companies that are making advertisements, they're basically pumping us full of stress 24/7, 365, because if they can direct your emotions and your stress in their favor, they make money off of you. So we need these things in our day to break that up, to really dull the signal. And strength training and cardio are an incredible way to do that. So if you aren't already, give it a try. And if you haven't already grabbed it, go ahead and grab the Core 4 Metabolism and Mobility Reset. It's a thing I put together which basically gives you a mobility follow along routine with adjustments. Like if you have trouble getting off the floor or knee issues, wrist issues, so you can do a mobility flow, which is also really good for de-stressing. There's also workouts in there that you can do that are follow along, and you can block out all the stuff I just mentioned and just focus on me telling you what to do. I mean, clearly you don't mind my voice that much, so it's really not too bad listening to me talk about how to do a workout. And then last but not least is the PFC cheat sheet. So you get some nutrition in there as well. It'll set you up in a good way to put a plate together so you feel energized. You start noticing the inches falling off, the clothes are fitting better, feeling more confident. So I would definitely grab that if you haven't already. But if you're the type of person who needs a little kick in the butt, like you need that accountability, then that's what coaching is for. And that's always here whenever you're ready. Just go ahead down below in the show notes or the description, wherever you're watching or listening, and click on that link to set up a discovery call with me just to talk about exactly what it is you need. So if you're in Greenville or local to Greenville, North Carolina, you could come train with me in person. Or if you're not, you could do it over Zoom. Or if you have a crazy ass schedule and you can't commit to a full hour, then that's what online training is for. Because we have multiple different workouts that are 20 minutes, that are 30, whatever you can manage. Maybe we just do walks, totally fine. And then we really go hard on the nutrition aspects. So whatever's right for you, we could figure it out. But before we do that, we got to have that chat and see what exactly you need for your situation. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you learned a thing or two, and I hope you take something good going forward out of this. But that's it for today. Thank you. I'll see you next time. Go kick some ass. Bye-bye.